Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something you might not have heard of before. It's called dry drunk syndrome.
Okay.
We'll be going through an article from Rolling Hills Recovery Center. It's titled, "What is a Dry Drunk? Signs, Symptoms, and How to Overcome." And it was published today, November 18th, 2024.
All right.
Now you might be thinking dry drunk, isn't that just not drinking? But trust me, it's a lot more complex than that. We're going to explore what this term really means, where it comes from, and why it matters, even if you've never struggled with alcohol yourself.
You're absolutely right. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. The term dry drunk actually originated within Alcoholics Anonymous, and it highlights a crucial part of recovery that many people, even those familiar with addiction, often miss.
So let's start by unpacking this term. What exactly does dry drunk mean? And is it an actual medical diagnosis?
That's a great question. It's not a clinical diagnosis that you would find in a medical textbook, but rather a descriptive term used in recovery circles. Essentially, it refers to someone who has stopped drinking, but hasn't addressed the underlying emotional and psychological issues that may have contributed to their addiction in the first place.
So it's like taking away the alcohol, but
Yeah.
not dealing with the root causes of the problem.
Exactly. Imagine treating a wound by simply removing a splinter, but not cleaning or disinfecting the area. The immediate problem, the splinter, is gone, but the potential for infection remains. Similarly, someone can be dry in the sense of not drinking, but still harboring unresolved emotional baggage. That could lead to a whole host of other problems.
That's a powerful analogy. It really drives home the point that sobriety is about so much more than just abstaining from alcohol. But what are some signs that someone might be struggling with dry drunk syndrome, and how would you even recognize it?
Well, the article lays out several telltale signs, and I think it can be helpful to illustrate them with some real-life examples. One of the most common signs is denial. This might look like someone minimizing their past drinking habits, insisting they didn't have a real problem, or that they could control their drinking if they wanted to.
But wouldn't some level of denial be natural? Especially early on in recovery. It seems like a pretty tough thing to admit that you have a problem.
Of course, acknowledging a problem can be difficult, but persistent denial can become a major obstacle to recovery. It's like trying to navigate a maze blindfolded, without a clear understanding of the problem's extent. It's impossible to chart a course towards lasting change.
That makes a lot of sense. So denial is one red flag. What are some other signs that someone might be dry drum?
Another common sign is anger, often coupled with resentment. This could manifest in various ways. Maybe they're easily irritable, quick to blame others for their problems, or hold on to grudges for a long time. They may be angry at themselves for their past behavior, angry at the world for seemingly conspiring against them, or just generally harboring a lot of unresolved negativity.
So instead of addressing those feelings, they're letting them fester and potentially spill over into their interactions with others.
Precisely. And that brings us to another hallmark of dry drunk syndrome: difficulty regulating emotions. Picture someone who struggles to cope with everyday stress, resorting to unhealthy outlets like isolating themselves, lashing out at others, or engaging in other compulsive behaviors. They haven't yet developed the healthy coping mechanisms necessary to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs without turning to alcohol or other substances.
So in a sense, they've traded one coping mechanism,
Yeah,
alcohol, for a bunch of other potentially harmful behaviors.
exactly. And all of this can have a devastating impact on their relationships. As the article points out, it's incredibly difficult to build and maintain healthy connections with others when you're emotionally closed off, struggling to manage your anger, or haven't addressed past hurts.
That seems pretty intuitive. If you're constantly on edge,
Yeah,
blaming others, or struggling to communicate your feelings effectively, it's going to create a lot of friction in your relationships.
you hit the nail on the head. These unresolved emotional issues can create a ripple effect, leading to strained relationships with partners, family members, friends, and even colleagues.
Okay, so we've got denial, anger, emotional instability, and strained relationships. Are there any other signs that might point to dry drunk syndrome?
One more significant sign the article highlights is a lack of personal growth. This can manifest as feeling stuck,
Yeah.
even though they've stopped drinking,
Yeah.
unable to break free from old patterns and move forward in life. They might be going through the motions of daily life, but they're not experiencing the kind of internal transformation that's often necessary for genuine, long-lasting recovery.
It's like they've hit pause on their personal development, even though they've achieved sobriety.
Precisely. They might be physically dry, but they haven't yet addressed the deeper issues that were driving their drinking in the first place. It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. Without addressing the root causes, the entire structure is vulnerable.
This all sounds pretty concerning, but I'm curious, what are the real-world consequences of ignoring these dry drunk behaviors? They're not drinking, so what's the big deal?
That's a question a lot of people have. And it's important to understand that the risks associated with unaddressed dry drunk behaviors are very real and can have far-reaching consequences. This is something I really want you, the listener, to take to heart. If you or someone you know is struggling with this, these risks are not to be taken lightly.
Let's dive into those risks. What are some of the potential consequences of not addressing dry drunk syndrome?
One of the most immediate and concerning risks is the increased potential for relapse. When someone is still grappling with those unmanaged emotions, unresolved trauma, or unhealthy coping mechanisms, it creates a breeding ground for cravings and makes it much easier to fall back into old patterns of drinking.
So even though they might have been sober for a while, those unresolved issues can make them incredibly vulnerable to relapse.
Absolutely. It's like a ticking time bomb. If those underlying issues aren't addressed, it's only a matter of time before something triggers a relapse. And it's not just relapse that we need to be concerned about. The article also emphasizes the significant negative impact dry drunk syndrome can have on mental health.
What kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, imagine carrying around all that pent-up anger, resentment,
Mm.
and emotional instability. Over time, it can take a serious toll on your mental well-being. It can contribute to chronic anxiety, deepen existing depression, and create a pervasive sense of hopelessness and despair. And when you combine those feelings with the strained relationships we talked about earlier, it paints a pretty bleak picture.
It sounds like a vicious cycle. The dry drunk behaviors lead to mental health struggles, which then further damage relationships, making the whole situation even worse.
It's a downward spiral that can be incredibly difficult to break free from. That's why it's so important to recognize the signs of dry drunk syndrome early on and to seek help before those negative consequences start to pile up.
This is all starting to feel a bit heavy. Is there any hope for people struggling with this? Can they overcome these challenges and truly recover?
Absolutely. And that's what's so encouraging about this article. It doesn't just outline the problems, it also provides a roadmap for recovery. It emphasizes that true lasting recovery is possible, and it outlines specific strategies for achieving it.
That's where things start to get really interesting. I'm eager to dive into those recovery strategies. But first, we need to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore the steps people can take to overcome dry drunk syndrome and build a foundation for lasting recovery. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into dry drunk syndrome.
Yeah, before the break, we were talking about the potential pitfalls of not addressing those root causes of addiction, even after achieving sobriety. And it sounds like those consequences can be pretty dire, from relapse to serious mental health challenges and strained relationships. But the article we're discussing doesn't just focus on the doom and gloom, it also offers a lot of hope and outlines concrete strategies for recovery.
Exactly. It emphasizes that recovery is absolutely possible. It's
Yeah.
not about being perfect or never experiencing challenges, but rather about developing the tools and strategies to navigate those challenges in a healthy and sustainable way.
So where do we even begin? What are some of the first steps someone can take to start addressing dry drunk syndrome and move towards genuine recovery?
Well, the article stresses the importance of professional help, and I couldn't agree more. Therapists can play a crucial role in this journey. They can provide a safe and supportive space for individuals to explore the underlying issues that may be driving their dry drunk behaviors. They can help uncover past traumas, identify negative thought patterns, and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
So it's not just about willpower or white-knuckling your way through sobriety. It's about seeking professional guidance to address those deep-seated issues that might be lurking beneath the surface.
Think of it like this. If you were dealing with a persistent physical ailment, you wouldn't hesitate to see a doctor. Similarly, if you're struggling with emotional or psychological issues, seeking help from a mental health professional is just as important.
That makes a lot of sense. But therapy can feel pretty daunting, especially if you've never tried it before. What are some specific types of therapy that might be particularly helpful for someone struggling with dry drunk syndrome?
That's a great question. The article actually mentions a few specific therapeutic approaches that have proven to be quite effective in addressing the kinds of thoughts and behaviors often associated with dry drunk syndrome.
I'm all ears. Tell me more.
One approach is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. CBT focuses on identifying and changing negative thought patterns and developing healthier coping mechanisms for managing stress in challenging situations.
So it's about recognizing those automatic negative thoughts that can pop up and learning how to challenge and reframe them.
Precisely. And by changing those negative thought patterns, you can start to shift your feelings and behaviors in a more positive direction.
That's fascinating. What are some other therapies that might be helpful?
Another therapy that's often recommended is acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. ACT focuses on accepting difficult thoughts and feelings, rather than trying to suppress or avoid them.
That sounds counterintuitive. Why would you want to accept negative thoughts and feelings? Wouldn't that just make them worse?
It might seem counterintuitive, but ACT is based on the idea that fighting against those difficult thoughts and feelings can actually give them more power. Instead, ACT encourages individuals to observe those thoughts and feelings without judgment, allowing them to come and go without letting them dictate their actions.
So it's about acknowledging those thoughts and feelings without letting them control you.
Exactly. And then there's dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, which focuses on building skills for regulating emotions, tolerating distress, and improving interpersonal relationships.
So DBT is all about learning how to ride those emotional waves without getting swept away.
That's a great way to put it. DBT provides individuals with practical tools for managing intense emotions, navigating conflict effectively, and building healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
These all sound like incredibly valuable therapeutic approaches. But therapy isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, right? What if someone tries therapy and it doesn't seem to be working for them?
That's a valid concern. It's important to remember that finding the right therapist and the right therapeutic approach can sometimes take time and experimentation. It's like trying on different pairs of shoes until you find the ones that fit just right.
So don't give up if the first therapist or type of therapy you try isn't a perfect match.
Exactly. It might take some time to find the right fit, but it's worth the effort. And remember, therapy isn't the only path to recovery. The article also highlights the importance of support groups.
Like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yes, support groups like AA can be incredibly valuable. They offer a sense of community and connection with others who understand the challenges of addiction and recovery firsthand.
So it's about realizing that you're not alone in this journey, that there are other people who've been there and can offer support and encouragement.
Exactly. Sharing your experiences with others who get it can be incredibly validating and empowering. It can help you to feel less isolated and more hopeful about the future. And support groups often provide a structured environment for working through the steps of recovery, offering guidance and accountability along the way.
That's wonderful. So we've got therapy and support groups. What other strategies does the article suggest for overcoming dry drunk syndrome?
Beyond seeking professional help and connecting with a supportive community, the article emphasizes the importance of self-care and self-reflection.
Okay, self-care. That's something we hear a lot these days. But what does it actually look like in the context of recovery?
It's about making a conscious effort to prioritize your physical and emotional well-being. It means engaging in activities that nourish your mind, body, and spirit. And it can look different for everyone. For some, it might involve getting regular exercise, eating a healthy diet, and prioritizing sleep. For others, it might mean spending time in nature, listening to music, or pursuing creative hobbies.
So it's about finding those activities that bring you joy, help you de-stress,
Yeah.
and make you feel good both physically and emotionally.
Exactly. And it's not just about indulging in pleasurable activities. Self-care also involves setting healthy boundaries, saying no to things that drain your energy, and making time for activities that promote relaxation and mindfulness.
That sounds like a pretty holistic approach to well-being. And you mentioned self-reflection. Why is that so important in the context of recovery?
Self-reflection is crucial because it helps you to become more aware of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It allows you to identify your triggers, those situations or emotions that might tempt you to return to old patterns. It also helps you to recognize negative thought patterns that might be holding you back or fueling those dry, drunk behaviors.
So it's about developing a deeper understanding of yourself, your motivations, and your vulnerabilities.
Precisely, the more you understand yourself, the better equipped you are to manage those triggers, challenge those negative thoughts, and make choices that support your recovery.
This all makes a lot of sense, but it also sounds like a lot of work. Is there any quick fix or magic bullet for overcoming dry drunk syndrome?
Unfortunately, there's no quick fix. Recovery is a journey, not a destination, and it requires ongoing effort and commitment. But the good news is that there are a lot of tools and strategies that can make that journey easier and more fulfilling.
So it's about developing a toolbox of coping mechanisms
Yeah.
that you can draw upon when you're facing challenges.
Exactly, and the article highlights several specific coping mechanisms that can be particularly helpful for navigating the ups and downs of recovery.
That's what I've been waiting for. Let's dive into those coping mechanisms. What are some of the most effective strategies for managing the challenges of dry drunk syndrome?
Well, we've already talked about the power of music, and the article echoes that sentiment. Whether you're listening to your favorite tunes, playing an instrument,
Hmm.
or even writing songs, engaging with music can be a fantastic way to process emotions, find comfort, and express yourself creatively.
I love that. Music can be so therapeutic. I find that listening to music often helps me to shift my mood or process difficult emotions. What are some other coping mechanisms that the article recommends?
Another strategy that's often mentioned is practicing grounding techniques. Grounding techniques are designed to bring your attention to the present moment, helping you to feel more anchored and in control when you're feeling overwhelmed or triggered.
Can you give me an example of a grounding technique? It sounds a bit abstract.
Sure, one simple but effective grounding technique is focusing on your breath. Notice the sensation of your breath as it enters and leaves your body. Another technique is to focus on your senses. Notice the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and sensations around you. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel?
So it's about shifting your attention away from those racing thoughts or overwhelming emotions and focusing on something tangible in the present moment.
Exactly. By grounding yourself in the present moment, you can interrupt those spiraling thoughts or intense emotions
Yeah,
and regain a sense of calm and control.
that's incredibly helpful. What other coping mechanisms does the article suggest?
Well, we've already touched on the benefits of exercise, and the article reiterates how powerful physical activity can be for managing stress, boosting mood, and improving overall well-being.
It's amazing how something as simple as going for a walk or hitting the gym can have such a profound impact on your mental state.
It really is. Exercise releases endorphins, those natural mood boosters that can help to lift your spirits and increase your resilience to stress. And it's not just about intense workouts. Even moderate exercise like walking, gardening, or dancing can have significant benefits.
So it's about finding ways to move your body that you enjoy and can realistically incorporate into your routine.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. Even short bursts of activity throughout the day can make a difference.
I love that. What other coping mechanisms does the article recommend? I'm starting to build quite a list here.
Another strategy that's often overlooked is spending time in nature. There's something incredibly restorative about being surrounded by the beauty of the natural world, whether it's taking a walk in the park, hiking in the woods, or simply sitting by a lake and listening to the birds sing. Connecting with nature can help to reduce stress, clear your mind, and promote a sense of peace and tranquility.
I can definitely relate to that. I find that even a short walk in nature can really help to reset my mood and calm my mind.
Right.
What other coping mechanisms are mentioned in the article?
While engaging in creative activities can be incredibly therapeutic, whether it's painting, drawing, writing, sculpting, playing music, or dancing, expressing yourself creatively can be a powerful way to process emotions, release tension, and tap into a sense of flow and joy.
It's like giving your inner child permission to come out and play.
Exactly, and it doesn't matter if you're not a natural artist or talented musician. The point is to engage in the process for the sheer enjoyment of it, to allow yourself to experiment and express yourself freely without judgment.
I love that. And finally, what about the importance of connection and support? We talked about support groups earlier, but what about the role of personal relationships in recovery?
Nurturing your relationships with loved ones, spending quality time with people who care about you, and reaching out for support when you need it can make a world of difference in your recovery journey.
So it's a reminder that you're not alone in this, that there are people who love and support you and want to see you thrive.
Exactly, and it's not just about receiving support, it's also about giving support to others.
Yeah.
Helping others can be incredibly healing and empowering. It can shift your focus away from your own problems and help you to feel more connected and purposeful.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the potential dangers of dry drunk syndrome to the many paths to recovery. But with so many potential coping mechanisms out there, how do you know which ones will work best for you? It can feel overwhelming to try to figure it all out.
That's a great question. And the truth is there's no one-size-fits-all answer. What works for one person might not work for another. It's all about experimentation. Try different strategies and see what resonates with you, what helps you to feel more grounded, centered, and in control.
So it's about creating a personalized toolkit of coping mechanisms that you can draw upon when you're facing challenges.
Precisely. And remember, it's not about finding the one perfect solution. It's about building a repertoire of strategies that you can adapt and adjust as needed.
That's such an empowering message. It reminds us that we have the power to choose how we respond to challenges.
Exactly, and that's a key element of recovery, taking ownership of your choices and actions.
It sounds like overcoming dry drunk syndrome is about so much more than just abstaining from alcohol. It's about a complete transformation, a commitment to personal growth and well-being.
I couldn't agree more. It's about creating a life that's aligned with your values, a life that's filled with joy, purpose, and meaningful connections.
This has been an incredibly illuminating conversation. We've explored the depths of dry drunk syndrome, from its signs and symptoms to its potential dangers, and the various strategies for recovery. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to the listener. What do you hope they take away from this deep dive?
I hope they come away with a deeper understanding of dry drunk syndrome and the importance of addressing the underlying issues that can fuel addiction, even after achieving sobriety. I hope they feel empowered to seek help if they're struggling, and I hope they feel inspired to cultivate a life that's rich in self-care, self-reflection, and meaningful connections.
Beautifully said, and remember, listeners, recovery is possible. It might be a journey, but it's a journey worth taking. Stay tuned for the final part of this deep dive, where we'll explore the long-term implications of dry drunk syndrome and the strategies for building lasting resilience. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into dry drunk syndrome. So far, we've explored the signs and symptoms, the potential dangers, and a variety of recovery strategies. But before we wrap things up, I'd like to shift our focus to the long-term implications of dry drunk syndrome and the strategies for building lasting resilience. After all, recovery isn't just about getting through the initial stages. It's about creating a fulfilling and meaningful life that's free from the grip of addiction.
I completely agree. We've talked about the immediate risks like relapse and mental health struggles, but it's crucial to understand that dry drunk syndrome can have a ripple effect across a person's entire life if those underlying emotional and psychological issues remain unaddressed.
So it's not just about avoiding those immediate pitfalls. It's about creating a life that's truly worth living, a life that's not constantly overshadowed by the residue of addiction.
Precisely. Think of it like this. Imagine carrying around a heavy backpack filled with unresolved trauma, emotional baggage, and unhealthy coping mechanisms. That weight can slow you down, make it harder to climb those mountains, and prevent you from reaching your full potential.
That's a powerful image. It really highlights the importance of unpacking that backpack and dealing with those burdens. But how do we even begin to build that kind of resilience? Where do we start?
Well, it's not about finding a magic solution or flipping a switch. Building resilience is an ongoing process, a journey that requires commitment and effort. But the good news is that there are proven strategies that can make this journey a lot easier and more rewarding.
Okay, I'm ready to hear about these strategies. What are some of the key steps someone can take to cultivate lasting resilience?
Well, first and foremost, continuing to engage in therapy can be incredibly beneficial. Having that ongoing support and guidance from a mental health professional can provide a safe space to process challenges, develop coping mechanisms, and address those deeper issues that might be holding you back.
So therapy isn't just a short-term fix. It's about building a long-term relationship with a professional who can help you navigate the ups and downs of recovery.
Exactly. Think of it like having a personal trainer for your mental and emotional well-being. They can help you identify those negative thought patterns, challenge those limiting beliefs, and develop a personalized plan for building a stronger, more resilient you.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some other strategies for building resilience?
Staying connected with a supportive community is another crucial element, whether it's through support groups like AA, close friends, family members, or a combination of these. Having a network of people who understand your journey and can offer encouragement and accountability can make a world of difference.
It's a reminder that you don't have to go it alone, that there are people who care about you and want to see you succeed.
Absolutely. Having that sense of belonging and support can be a powerful buffer against stress and can help you stay on track when those inevitable challenges arise.
Okay, so we've got therapy and a supportive community. What else can we add to our resilience toolkit?
We've talked a lot about self-care throughout this deep dive, and it's worth emphasizing again that making those healthy habits a part of your daily routine is essential for building lasting resilience. Getting enough sleep, eating a nutritious diet, exercising regularly, and engaging in stress-reducing activities. These are all crucial pieces of the puzzle.
It's about creating a foundation of well-being that can support you through thick and thin.
Good.
through those challenging moments and those periods of smooth sailing.
Exactly. When you prioritize your physical and emotional health, you're better equipped to handle stress, regulate your emotions, and navigate those inevitable curveballs that life throws your way.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any other strategies that you'd recommend for building resilience in the long term?
One practice that I find incredibly helpful both personally and professionally is mindfulness.
Mindfulness. We hear that word thrown around a lot, but I'm not always sure what it really means. Can you break it down for us?
In the simplest terms, mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about noticing your thoughts, feelings, and sensations
Hmm.
without getting swept away by them.
So it's about developing a greater sense of awareness, both of your inner world and the world around you.
Exactly. It's like training a muscle. The more you practice mindfulness, the better you become at observing your thoughts and emotions without getting hooked by them. And this can be incredibly valuable in the context of recovery because it helps you to create a space
Hmm.
between those triggers and your reactions.
So instead of automatically reacting to those triggers, you're able to pause, observe,
Yeah.
and make a conscious choice about how you want to respond.
Precisely. And that ability to pause and choose your response is a key element of resilience. It empowers you to take control of your actions rather than letting your emotions dictate your behavior.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. I feel like I've learned so much about dry drunk syndrome, not just the challenges, but also the incredible potential for growth and transformation. But before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to our listener. What key takeaway would you want them to leave with today?
I want them to remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination. It's a continuous process of growth, self-discovery, and healing. It's about learning to navigate life's challenges in a healthy and sustainable way. And most importantly, it's about creating a life that's aligned with your values, a life that's full of meaning, purpose, and connection.
That's a beautiful message. And remember, listeners, you're not alone on this journey. If you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out for help. There are resources available from therapy and support groups to self help books and online communities. Recovery is possible and it's worth the effort. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep believing in the power of transformation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into dry drink syndrome. We'll see you next time. I live